response to you saying you'd vote for the Republican ticket. Wow, former AG Bill Barr, who let a lot of great people down by not investigating voter fraud in our country, has just endorsed me for president, despite the fact that I called him weak, slow-moving, lethargic, gutless, and lazy. Based on the fact that I greatly appreciate his wholehearted endorsement, I am removing the word lethargic from my statement. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. It's classic Trump. What's the question?
That's Bill Barr telling CNN host and woman with a Superman jawline, Caitlin Collins, that he's supporting Trump regardless of what the former president might have to say about him. Welcome to Nerk News. I'm Nerkish, and boy oh boy do I love when interviews like this blow up in the host's face, especially when it's the smug political hacks at CNN.
But he's mocking you.
So, it's not about me. I think that I've said this all along. If faced with a choice between two people, neither of which I think should be president, I feel it's my duty to pick the person who I think would do the least damage to the country. And I think Trump would do less damage than Biden. And I think all this stuff about a threat to democracy, I think the real threat to democracy is the progressive movement and the Biden administration.
The Biden administration or President Biden himself?
Biden's support for the progressive agenda.
You know, the liberal female mind can't comprehend egos that aren't as fragile as their own. It's why they ruin every male-dominated space they enter. I mean, what is Barr supposed to do here? Change his opinion on who he thinks should run the country because the guy personally teased him a bit? Besides, isn't what he's saying exactly the same thing that they were applauding Hillary Clinton for saying a few weeks ago? You know, it's not about you, get over yourself, put your ego aside, and get out and vote? Or is that stuff only good when it applies to Democrats?
I think a lot of people hear that, and the case that we just talked about that went before the Supreme Court essentially, and say, how can you see that and say that Biden is a greater threat to democracy?
Well, where are we losing our freedoms? How are our freedoms being constrained? They're being constrained by the progressive government. And, democracy, especially, from the Anglosphere democracies, the Five Eyes and so forth, the threat's never been for autocratic government on the right.
But how specifically is Biden threatening democracy?
The threat to freedom and democracy has always been on the left. It's the collectivist, socialist agenda. And that is where we're losing our freedom. Parents are losing the freedom to control their children's education. People can't speak their mind without losing their jobs and things like that. This is worse than the McCarthy era. Where is that coming from? It's not coming from the right.
You know, think what you want about Bill Barr, but he's clearly smarter than this, I'm going to say woman. I mean, liberal journalists are usually out of their league in interviews like this, which is why they inevitably have to resort to emotional blackmail and guilt-tripping their guest, rather than attempting to understand or clarify their viewpoints, which is, one of the jobs of a journalist.
Those two things that you just noted there, you believe are worse than a president of the United States trying to subvert the will of the people by overturning the results of the election?
I think a country, all the things together, like we're not enforcing our borders, we have open borders, we have lawlessness in our cities. We have regulations coming fast and furious, so telling people what kind of stoves they can use and what kinds of cars they have to drive, and eliminating cars and so forth. Those are the threats to democracy.
But President Biden is not in control of what some school boards across the country are doing.
He's using the administrative.
You can make that argument, but how is that the same thing?
Major changes are being made in our country without the democratic process, and they're being made by bureaucrats in these agencies.
Pause. You cannot argue that Republicans across the country are not doing that as well. In my own hometown, there's a huge fight at the library over which books kids can read. This is not something that is a single-party fight.
Do you think don't you think there should be some limits on what people are able to read at very young ages?
I just think people look at what you're saying and they don't.
And
maybe even Republicans who have concerns about what's happening with school boards or the culture. And don't, maybe abortion even, don't equate that with January 6th and Trump's efforts. When you told him the election was not stolen, and he still went out there and said it was stolen and led a lot of people to believe that. Those things aren't equal. It feels like a false equivalency.
Well, I disagree.
Great job. Good interview, dude. You really nailed it. Every time I watch one of these things, it feels like some chick in her first year of college trying to mean girl someone into agreeing with her. I mean, as if this interview wasn't ridiculous enough, she later had the conservative lady from The View come on so they could gossip about Bill Barr behind his back and talk about what a great interview Caitlin Collins is, which wouldn't be so off-putting if they just dropped the patina of being sophisticated journalists. I mean, I'd have much more respect for them if they just acknowledged that they're gossipy Democrat cheerleaders. But it's the combination of their behavior under the guise of professional journalism that makes them so sleazy and untrustworthy. But let me know what you think. What are your thoughts about Bill Barr? How'd he do in the interview? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That stuff really does help us out. Until then, this has been Nerk News. Thanks for watching. Bye!